Story time. Please note that I'm going to share something personal from somewhere between like 6 and 8 years ago, and trigger warning for like psychological sexual violence, um, and some self harm as far as sexual stuff, and just general being codependent um, with a partner. Yeah. Anyway, so um, when I was sober for like 2.5 years in my late 20s, and I was in a very vulnerable place. When I was first sober, I felt really alone in it. Um, I was doing all that first time sober stuff, like learning how to handle anxious situations without having a couple shots first. And so I knew this guy. He was part of my community. I knew this guy, and he was like around like 15 years older than me, close to, I think. Um, and I know he had been sober for a few years, and so I kind of felt like and hoped that, if I made friends with him, that maybe like that would provide some comfort, provide some guidance, because I was still in a pretty like overwhelmed place in my sobriety, and I didn't get any of that. Um, I was with another sober person. That was pretty much the only box that checked. But he was like 15 years older than me or close to it, and was just absolutely as psychologically immature as I was. And I was like freshly sober, like mid to late 20s. And anyway, the actual story. That was all context. The actual story. I was dating this guy for a few months, and he was working on something like 3 hours away in Michigan, right? And so, and he was gone for like a week or more. And so we made plans for me to go up and hang out with him, like where he was working, for like a day. And because I, worked multiple jobs then, work multiple jobs now. And, oh man, that's back when my rent was like 400. Mm. Anyway, so I got off work multiple jobs for like one day so that I could drive 3 hours to hang out with this fucker for like a day. And and I don't like driving. It stresses me out. Takes a lot out of me. This is before I understood that I was autistic. This is before I really knew how to regulate my nervous system and stress as far as like my cptsd or autism or anything. So this is like pre self care. Yeah, this is pretty much pre self care. Um, Before the self care times. And so I drove up 3 hours, and um, he didn't even like act happy to see me or anything. It was just normal for the guys that I used to date. And um, codependency. So drove up, and like, I don't know, it just ended up being like really disappointing and awkward, and like he expected me to like immediately be ready to like hang out with his friends and be entertaining, and I had just sat in a car for 3 hours, and and he was just kind of overall rude, and I didn't feel well received. And and then I think the people he was working with got ready to end their day, and so I was going back to where the guy I was dating was sleeping, and I just was not emotionally okay. I just really was not emotionally okay. I had, made sure that I could get one day off to drive 3 hours to hang out for like part of a day and a night, and then drive back 3 hours and go back to work. And and so we were getting ready towards the end of our day, and he was like, "Well, we're gonna have sex, right?" And I was just sort of like, like I wasn't there. I wasn't feeling it, and like, I me now I completely understand why. There are multiple factors there. Um, but the words that he said, the reason that this is a bad memory, was done all that, came up there. And his words were, "Well, I thought we were going to have sex. What was the point of you coming out here?" And God, I wish I'd broken up with him then. I wish I'd gone home that night. I knew that I wasn't going to be okay to drive for 3 hours again that day, and especially being upset. I wish that I had just gotten like a hotel or something and driven back and then like been done with him. It didn't last much longer after that, but that um, was just such an immediate devaluing me as a person. Um, because like clearly the only benefit to me being in the same place at the same time with him was so we could fuck, and and to say that on top of that you just drove 3 hours and then had like a shitty evening because I was shitty to you all night, and now I'm gonna give you shit because you won't put out. And yeah, and I ended up being really upset and just kind of shut down. And I ended up sitting on the floor against the bed almost the entire night because I was too angry and hurt. And I felt like really betrayed. And I felt just really kind of shit on and devalued. And since this was an abusive and codependent relationship, I put out the next morning before I left. There was something in my nervous system, the way that I have been raised, the way that I have been abused all my life, the ways that it was still familiar to me at the time. It's not now. Um, but the ways that being treated like that was familiar to me then, I felt like I had to check that box. Like, not for him, but like in myself, I had to like check that box of like, God, what did I come up here for? Clearly, it wasn't for you to give me any kind of joy or satisfaction or love or warmth or anything. And so yeah, and I don't think we have language for that, but I know a lot of people are familiar with that kind of self rape. That like you're you're going into it like intentionally. I don't know how much that is like technically consent or not, but you're going into it intentionally because you feel like you have to. And I don't think it's okay to blame the person you're having sex with like with the same gravity of saying that that's rape, but I feel like that's some version of like self-rape. Um to just make yourself go ahead and do it regardless of whether you actually want to because you feel like you have to. Yeah. I'm so glad I don't do that anymore now. Shit. I actually just spent my first night out of town by myself. I never like stayed a place. I've gone out of town by myself. I've never like stayed somewhere by myself. I had an adorable Airbnb, which I'll be done using Airbnb after this. I had reserved this a while back. Um, but I had a lovely Airbnb. Um, I mostly just like walked around naked a lot more than I would have expected myself to. But I'm also really ready to live by myself again, so I was probably just like, I need proof I'm alone! And it was nice. And I took care of myself, and I ate enough, and I slept enough. I stretched, hydrated, and yeah. And I made sure that I had time for myself at all points of the journey. Because that's how I take care of me. Stay regulated.